Evening, folks. This is the Railroad in the Basement at the Cluttered Shop Desk. And this evening, we have a small project. This is an Athearn GP40, a few years old, that was acquired not long back. Runs great, has a very nice Soundtraxx decoder built into it. This was one that came as 21 pin ready, with sound and everything. However, it does have a few things to be desired. For example, the lights are all incandescent 1.5 volt, which means they're not very bright. So that's going to get changed. They're going to get switched over to LEDs. We're also going to pull the 21 pin decoder for use in another project. We're going to convert this over to an Econami installation, since the GP40 sounds are all on the Econami decoder, and it will take care of everything we need. Without further ado, off we go. We now have the shell opened up on the GP40, and you'll notice a few things. We've got our Athearn factory installed speakers here, which are working just fine, so we'll keep those. This board is going to come out entirely. This board is going to be saved for use in an AMD 103 or P42 that's coming in a few weeks, because it happens to be the higher end of the Tsunami series from June of 2024, so it's got a good set of sounds on it, and we'll build that one into that machine with a Nix Decoder Buddy Mini at that time. That's coming up down the road. Now this one is equipped with 1.5 volt outputs. Those are all coming off. These LEDs are all coming out. They will be replaced by high intensity LEDs to get these little, I probably stumbled on that a moment ago. I said LEDs, I meant light bulbs, because these are all 1.5 volt bulbs, and they're all going to go bye-bye. The brightness level is, honestly, in my world, kind of pathetic. I don't like 1.5s because they just don't give the intensity. If you've ever looked at a train in the real world coming at you, you're well aware that those are not dim. Those things will, they're going to give you sunspots if you look at them too close. So we're going to continue from here, and once we've got this stripped down, we'll come back. Okay, we've now got the wiring removed. These are the wire harnesses for the 1.5 volt bulbs. Athearn used kind of a sticky compound to hold them in place. They weren't really glued, so that was actually a good thing because it made it much easier to remove them. That shiny black spot you see right there is where one of the two strobes was mounted. There's the other one, and of course there's the headlight right up in there. What we'll replace those with will be a 2mm bulb. Did I have one sitting here right now or not? Maybe. Yeah, here we go. Hey, it's the cluttered workbench. Things are going to be all over the place. This bulb type right here, you can get these on Amazon fairly inexpensively. They're pre-resisted. They're 2mm, and with just a tiny little bit of work on the hole, they'll actually fit right there in that front part and do a very nice job of taking up the role of headlights. I'll use some micro LEDs, which I do have those up here. Here we are, these guys. These are micros, Z size they call them sometimes. You can barely even see the LED. I'll use 2 of those for the strobes. That'll take care of the lighting. Now on the board, on the machine itself, there's what's left. And since there's really nothing at all wrong with this board, I will keep it in case it's needed for a replacement down the road. This guy, of course, like I said earlier, we're going to save it and use it in another project. Athearn did us a nice set of favors in the way they constructed this thing. The biggest thing I noticed right off the bat was they gave us plenty of wire for the speakers, so we have no problem routing that into the new decoder. We also have good leads from the trucks on either end that will go onto the new Econami board that we're going to pull here in just a minute and put on this thing. So it's all very neat for the way we're going to put it together. The one thing they have that's different, and this is a hangover from the blue box days, is here's the wire from under the motor, and there is no wire on the top of the motor. It's a clip on the bottom of the board. Let's see if I can get in here and see it. Can't really see it. You can see it there. See it at each end. It's clipped on. So we'll clip this board off and just take it to the side and just put it up, because like I say, I might run across an Athearn that needs a 1.5 rebuild sometime down the road, and it'll be perfectly good for that. On we go. All right, now this is going to look real familiar to anybody that's ever done work with Athearn Blue Box engines back in the day. The classic clip on the top, just like they had on the bottom, to get their power connections from the frame and the fixed soft steel that they used to use for their electrical pickups. Those days are long gone, and I actually don't miss them in the slightest. This motor's perfectly good. It'll get a little bit of oil, but a little bit of maintenance before we put everything back together just to make sure it's good. There's the clip I mentioned a moment ago. Nice and clean. Like I said, we'll just save that for later. Here's our next part. Now at this point, we've added an orange wire to the top of the motor, simply because that's usually what you do for the defaults. Right there's a little orange wire. My phone will focus. There we are. You add an orange wire right there, considerably longer than it needs to be, just because it's a scrap piece I grabbed. This is the decoder that's going in. Looks a little less complicated than the one that came out, but that's because it's only one board instead of two. Econami decoders and a lot of and other decoders also of this particular format always have one cutout that says F. Well, folks, that means forward. Anybody that had installed one of these, you might not have seen that yet. So if you haven't seen that and haven't realized that's what that means, that's why that is cut out like that. It's an F. It means put it to the front of the engine. So, all right, we're going to keep going now. All we've got to do at this point, we'll use some foam double-sided tape to attach the decoder up here to the top of the motor. That motor's got quite a magnet in it, I notice. That's good. And once we have that on, and we'll start doing some of the soldering to get the new connections to the decoder, we'll come back. All right, we're at our first wiring checkpoint on this process. If you haven't ever done this, you know that it's a very good idea to stop and check things along the way so you don't finish up your model and then put it on the rails and have something go badly wrong or just flat not work. And then you have to go back through it all. So in this case, what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've got the contacts done on each corner. So we have each rail on each end. Okay, you can see those. We've gone ahead and done the speaker connections here. Since the speaker boxes, we're going to use the same one that Athearn had in here that seems to be in perfect working condition. And we also have our motor connections back here in the back. Now, there's a little bit of guesswork on motors because the manufacturers don't label the contact points as to whether the motors are positive or negative. Originally, the bottom wire was supposed to be the negative, the top one was supposed to be the positive, but that doesn't always hold true. But we went with that for now. We'll see how that works. If it doesn't, we just switch the solder joints, not a problem. So the white wire is currently going to the negative connection on the back there, and the orange wire, much trimmed down, is now connected to the positive. And we'll turn it around real quick so you can see that. Nice and neat. We've only got one wire that's trying to get in the way. I did a test fit with the shell. It's not running into anything so far. And the only one that's trying to get in the way is the white one. But we'll have it routed where it won't be a problem. Okay, now to go check the bench. We're at our test track, which I usually do in Dodge City. This track section right through here not only functions as the spur line for my lumber yard, but it's also my programming and testing track when I first put an engine together. So this is where we'll start for this. We've checked already to make sure that the DCC is reading at address 3 on the decoder, and it did. So what we'll do now is we'll pick up that address and see if we've got sound and everything on the engine. All right. Now we switch to the default address 3, and we'll now turn the power onto the track. I use a little double pole, double throw there to go from programming to run or off. So we'll flip that to on. We have a nice blue light. Do we have sound? Yes, we do. Now the next question is, are we going the right direction? All right, let's find that out. So if we're not, we'll know in just a second here. I'm setting forward, so I'll give it just a little bit of throttle. The front of the engine is toward us. The speakers are in the back. And it might die out too because it's not got a... Uh-oh. A problem has been found. The motor has no power. So we'll have to go find that and fix it. And after a couple of seconds of checking, literally in this case, I discovered that despite the fact it looked good, that joint for the orange wire actually wasn't making a good contact. So that's been fixed. Now we'll check the direction to make sure it's right. Should come toward us. There we go. Okay, the wires to the motor are correct. That takes care of that step. Next step is to start getting the wiring for the lights done. Okay, the first step on getting set up for lights is to make sure that the holes for your lights are the right size. In the case of most HO scale engines, the headlights and taillights, the openings tend to be a little bit smaller, probably about 0.02 of 2 millimeters. So I say 0.02. Let's say 1.8. They tend to be about 1.8 millimeters, give or take here and there. And this one was a little bit closer than I like on the front, but it still came out okay, so it'll work. It'll look just fine. But the trick on this is you use a very sharp pin vise at 2 millimeters, and they're not very expensive. I just set it down. This is another thing that happens in the cluttered workbenches. I set stuff down and then I misplace it. But you take a very sharp pin vise and you bore that out just a little bit, just enough that those lights will fit in correctly before you put them in. On we go. Okay, this is our first wiring harness. Now, this is 2 of the 2 millimeter bulbs that will be used. See these 2 right here. You'll notice that I've painted them with some silver. You can use black if you like. The reason for this is simply to prevent excess light getting loose on the inside of the engine, which sometimes will give you plastic glows or make your cab look bright when you don't really want it to. I've also knocked it down to where it's just 1 wire for each side of the 2 LEDs. This saves you, believe it or not, saves a chunk of space inside your engine. And in HO scale, there's not a whole lot of extra space to work with. It's not as bad as N or Z or one of those little tiny ones, but you've still got a limitation on space. So anything you can do to keep it down a bit is a good idea. We're still going to leave a fair bit of length on that. That's probably more than I'm going to actually need, because we do want to have, these will be attached inside the shell to the opening, and we do still need to have it where we can get into the shell for maintenance and whatnot down the road. And we'll continue on from here. All right, this is how the wiring harness for the headlights looks once it's installed. It's just tucked up in there. We had to cut a little piece of the clear out to make sure there was a decent path for it. And on the front, due to the way this model is built, we did have to use a couple of aftermarket Athearn lenses in place of that because the LEDs simply weren't long enough to reach all the way to the front of the housing. So let's get this hooked up and go see how. Okay, so we just have the shell kind of sitting there at the moment just so we can test things. And we've got our LEDs in for the headlights now. Let's turn them on and see how they look. There you go. That's nice and solidly bright. If you look at that straight on, very bright. Our next steps will be getting the strobes and the backup lights installed. We'll get a Keep Alive installed in there as well to help the engine over dead spots or dirty track. And then we'll finally wrap it up with the backups, the strobes, and have it all finished up. To be continued. All right, now we have gotten the xenon strobes wired in. Those are the small black and red wires going up to the top of the engine shell. I'll show you how that works out. Flip this guy over real quick. Those are installed. See those guys right there? Yep, they're installed, but they're not yet programmed. So we're not quite to that stage. So let's go just see if we get some solid light on those guys real quick. All right, the engine's sitting on the test track. And of course, we have our headlight. Turn that off. We'll see if our xenons light up. And there they are. Those are considerably brighter than the 1.5 volt bulbs that were in there before. They'll have a flash pattern assigned to them before we get done with the program. Last step before we box this guy up and put a cap in it to keep it over the dead spots is to add the backup lights on the back end of the engine. We'll go ahead and go get that going. There's our modified wiring harness for the 2 lights. They're already painted. And we've already got the hole reamed out for each bulb on the end of the engine. So we'll put that in. Alright, now we have the backup lights down there in their spots. Wired to the board. Gives us a little flexibility if we ever have to get into the unit. Because, I mean, that's the only reason I leave that much wire around, so I can open it if I need to do maintenance or other things to the engine itself. Current, this one's in pretty good shape, so it'll be a long time before it needs it. But better to have it set up where you can get in there and put some oil in the gears if you need to. Due to space considerations, I had to go ahead and give up on keeping the factory speakers in. These are the factory ones, and this is what's going to replace it. You'll notice a very distinct size difference. Will I lose anything in quality? Probably not. This is an iPhone 8 speaker, and I've been using these for quite a while on various engines, and they don't use up a lot of space. They also have a very good range of response, so you get some pretty good lows out of them, which is impressive for a speaker that size. And they work really well and take up and just free up more space in your engine, and that's something that's always at a premium. And now we have the cell phone speaker mounted in the top of the dynamic brake housing, and there's enough room there for it to fit in. I trimmed the edges of the shell back a little bit so the speaker would fit better in that spot. That still leaves good clamping on each end of the dynamic brake housing to fit in there. Now this still looks a little bit like a rat's nest. It's not nearly as bad as you might think it is. The 2 loops of larger wire will get tucked into each end. Of course, the yellow will get tucked in. The smaller wire is our strobes up front, and those will get tucked in neatly as well. We have one last thing to add, and that's going to be this guy right here, which will get tucked in back here underneath the speaker in the area we opened up. All right, almost done. One more look as we close it up. You'll notice that those wires actually did fit in fairly neatly into their various spots, and they're all going to be tucked out of the way and out of sight. The blue wire you see there is that keep alive I showed you a moment ago. It tracks back into the back of the engine as planned. And all we got to do now is snap that on, tie the shell down, give it some testing and programming. Alright folks, we're back at the programming track over in Dodge City now. We're going to check out our finals on this engine and see if our little project's all complete. If you got this far, we do appreciate you hanging around for all the work we've done here. Hope it's been a little useful in your own hobby. Let's fire this engine up and see how she does. Alright, we got the right prime mover going on there. That's sounding good and proper. See how our headlight looks. There's that. How about our strobes? We've got everything programmed, so everything's lined up now. There's our strobes. Proper Amtrak K5 LA horn. Should do everything we really need. Kind of a generic air-driven bell known for all over the place, but it's the right thing. I'll give it a little, I'll throw it into backup here. Now I'll just put my hand over here. You can see how bright that is back there. Nice and bright. We'll give her a little bit of backup on speed step 1. Plenty of control with this new decoder, much better than the original layout. The decoder was great, but the motherboard on it kind of left something to be desired, as we know. And we'll give that a stop. Come back forward. Just a little bit. And we're going to call that fixed. This engine is ready to go, ready to be on the boards, do whatever work we throw at it. Once again, thank you for hanging around. This has been the Railroad in the Basement and the Cluttered Workbench. Y'all have a good one.